Hello, this is Father Hightower, and welcome to Vox SFX, the voice of St. Francis Xavier Parish in Missoula, Montana. We are so pleased that you have joined us. Your participation enriches our entire community. We hope that our show serves as a point of light, helping to deepen our understanding and experience of the Catholic faith in history. So join us as we seek through prayer, study, interviews, and discussion the roots of the practice of our faith. God bless.
Thanksgiving isn't just an American holiday, but it is also an attitude. When we come to the table together to share our meal with our family, we are giving thanks the entire time. When we talk about Thanksgiving in terms of the holiday, though, we often associate it with wide spreads of food, family gatherings, good times, hopefully shared by all. But sometimes that's not necessarily the case. Though a lot of us may have had happy childhoods with good families who came together, there are some of our peers, some of the people that we share our church with, who may not have as positive association with these holidays. It is our duty to love them. It is our duty to look out for them and uplift them and help them to share in the joy that we find at the sacred table and at the family table. Because at the end of the day, gratitude is good for the soul, not just one day a year or even one day a week, but as a general rule for living. Gratitude just feels better. Within this wide panoply of experience, we do have one thing that we share in common: our God, who loves us, each and every one, and that alone is worth giving thanks for. In today's episode, we have Father Mark, Father Hightower, and Father Conroy on to talk about this spirit of gratitude, some of their own favorite memories from their childhood, and the true spirit of Thanksgiving. With us in the studio today are all three of our parish fathers, Father Hightower, Father Mark, and Father Conroy. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Nice to be here.
You're welcome.
Well, this is going to be our Thanksgiving episode for this particular year, and it has been a busy one here at the parish since the last time we all checked in. But let's kind of go around real quick and talk about what we have to be thankful for as Catholics, as Christians, as Americans. What are we looking at? What are we thankful for?
Well, last Saturday evening, I had this 5 o'clock Mass, and that was after hearing a bunch of confessions for an hour and a half. And I was filled at the end of the Mass with gratitude. So my experience of the confessions that day, not really different from many other days, but I just felt, well, I was edified by the sincerity of people coming to confession. And, you know, what people come to confess may be big things or little things, but what is, you know, the common theme is they all want to be better. They want to be better people. They know they're not their best selves, and that's what I walk away with. Is like, here, these are all people that are not awful people because of the awful things they've done, but they're good people. They want to be better. So Mass was, and it was, a smaller congregation than usual. I think because the Grizz were on TV or something, but I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they knew I was a presider. So, but anyway, the communion line. I was again overcome by the faithfulness of our people, of our parish. So at the end of Mass, I stood up and attempting to make a joke, I said, well, I don't know, maybe I'm coming down with something, but I just want to say how grateful I am for the faith of everyone, of the people in this parish. Now, a lot of people didn't understand I was making a joke about maybe I'm coming down with something, because about 10 people asked me if I'm feeling better. But anyway, that joke bounced off the walls, apparently. But So I would suggest, because a lot of people, this is the parish they come to, and they've come to it for a long time. They don't go to other places. But I think it's worth giving thanks for the faithfulness of the people in our parish. I have found, I've been here a little over a year now, it's been kind of a renewal of my devotional faithfulness, or my sense of being grateful to be surrounded by people of steadfast faith. I've never struggled with my own faith, but it's reinforcing and very encouraging. I think that's well worth our parish being grateful for.
I'll pick up on what Pat just said, and by the way, I did get one of those people that had been at Mass, came down, because I was downstairs, and they came down and said, "Gee, Father Pat's not feeling well." I said, "Well, that's news to me." Anyway, so I'm glad you're feeling much better, Pat.
I'm feeling just fine.
One of the things I'm grateful for as a Catholic is our sacramental traditions. In fact, you and I were just having a conversation a few hours ago, Nicholas, and I was sharing how much I enjoy receiving communion and then watching people coming back from communion. Watching people come back, and I always try to do this, trying to imagine each person coming back, understanding that this is a suffering person, this is a person struggling in some ways, and we experience being fed together. I just love that experience. I love the communion of receiving the Lord together and the union that draws us into. So I love our traditions. I love our sacramental traditions.
The love and laughter shared around the table, both the Eucharistic table, but also the Thanksgiving table. We had our staff meeting last week, and for many years now, going back 15, 20 years, I've cooked a turkey for the staff for wherever place I'm at. When I was at Gonzaga University, I actually lived on the girls' floor in Catherine Monica, and so I would cook the Thanksgiving meal for the 75 girls that lived on the floor. And it was always kind of interesting. I would do the turkey and then tell them they had to do the rest, all the side dishes and stuff like that. We'd eat at 3 o'clock, and someone would show up with a 20-pound bag of potatoes at 2:30, so it was just a lot of fun, a lot of laughter. So I think that's what I enjoy the most, the laughter around both the Eucharistic table, but also the laughter shared around the Thanksgiving table.
When you bring up an excellent point there, Father Hightower, in that this is also a very personal holiday for us. It's something that a lot of people spend with their families, getting together and sharing these traditions, sharing that laughter, dealing with that one uncle that nobody wants to talk about. But there's also that. So I just wanted to ask you all, do you have any favorite memories from when you were kids? Any favorite Thanksgiving traditions? Crazy uncles?
We did, certainly. One of the things for my family is, we always gather together, but we didn't linger around the table. It was, you ate, then you did dishes, and then you watched football. And I remember the first time my now sister-in-law, has been married 30 years to my brother. She came over for Thanksgiving when they were still dating, and she was almost in tears because her family would sit around the table for hours, and we didn't do that. And so that's one of the memories I have. But for us, it was eat, do dishes, and then football.
Did your family have a particularly favorite at the time? I know that Boston College has since become a favorite of yours, but at the time, was there somebody y'all rooted for?
Not really. I mean, it was always the Detroit Lions were always on Thanksgiving Day, so we'd watch that. But it wasn't particularly, the Seahawks were never on, so we didn't get a cheer for the best team.
Well, I come from a rather large extended family, and sometimes we'd have Thanksgiving, just with our own family at home, but not that wasn't the standard. One way or another, it was always chaos. I remember the chaos around the preparation of the meal and everything. And I kind of love that chaos. I don't think I loved it all that much at the time, but I kind of miss it now. The chaos of everybody pitching in and having to do this and avoid that. And But I love, I've always been really grateful for my extended family. My dad came from a large family of siblings, and they all lived in the Denver area where I grew up for the most part. And very often we'd go and we'd share holiday events together at somebody's home in our family. And I loved getting together with my cousins, and yeah, I just loved that stuff.
Well, just a couple of anecdotes. Thanksgiving 1983, I was actually in the Silver Dome at the Detroit Lions football game. So I don't know if the cameras scanned the crowd and Craig saw me without knowing. And what I remember from the event is, it's a dome indoors, right? Beginning of the game, you could look across the stadium and see people. At the end of the game, there was so much cigarette smoke you couldn't see across the stadium. Those were the days. Okay, so I think I've said this various times and places, but my parents divorced when I was very young. I did not grow up with Thanksgiving. I mean, I'd be home at Thanksgiving, which meant it'd be my mom and my brother and me, and then her family, which was she only had one sister. So that family gathering was small, and it wasn't the family that I didn't know them until I was about 10 years old. So it wasn't until I got into high school, the end of high school, and then through college, that when I was in the home of my father, that his family gathered for Thanksgiving at my Uncle Bill's house. Now, my dad and his 7 siblings are from Scobie, Montana, and all had migrated to the Seattle area except one who lived in Denton by then, Montana. But all the rest had migrated to Seattle. And on Thanksgiving, we'd all gather at my Uncle Bill's because he was a medical director and a surgeon at Cabrini Hospital in Seattle. So he had a nice big house that sat on Magnolia Bluff. And for anybody who's been to Seattle, it's the North Bluff looking down on the port of Seattle on Elliott Bay. Beautiful view, beautiful everything. And there we were, and Uncle Bill, the surgeon, carved the dang turkey. And everybody else in the family had their dish or whatever. So by the time I came around to see how they all did this, everybody had something. And I remember in college, or one of those times going to, and there was a bowl of creamed onions. And I thought, oh, creamed onions, I haven't seen these for a long time. I kind of like these. I forgot all about it. And all of my aunts, 5 of them, are laughing. And what are you laughing at? I says, well, that was your mother Ruth's contribution.
No joke.
So when my mom married into the family, that's the dish that she would bring to such gatherings. Oh, yeah. So it's like, well, that's kind of interesting. Okay. So my Thanksgiving memories in terms of the family coming together are really from my late adolescence and early adulthood. I've often reflected, the word Eucharist is the Greek word for Thanksgiving. All right. So when our parish gathers for Thanksgiving every week, we hear the family stories in the scriptures, and then we share the Thanksgiving meal. Well, that was the place where I heard family stories. I'd hear from my aunts and uncles anecdotes about, and my dad's nickname growing up was Buster. So he grew up in the 30s and 40s. I guess everybody had a nickname. His was Buster. And so all my aunts and uncles and my cousins all called him Uncle Bussy. It's like, Uncle Bussy? Just, who are you? So there's just those little things like that, so that it's been, I've found it a very interesting and I think, meaningful echo for us that what our families hopefully come together to celebrate in Thanksgiving is what, in fact, we celebrate as a parish every week.
The teaching mass I do for the OCIA program, the former RCIA program, and for the little kids and stuff like that, the teaching mass, I describe it as going to Thanksgiving dinner, and coming forward. And so I use all that, the references to the Old Testament, Hebrew scripture, and New Testament is the family telling the family stories. And, then finally the patriarch or the matriarch talks, and that's the gospel. And so how we do that, and then how we set the table with the corporal and the purificator and the patent and the chalice. And
everybody has their role.
Everyone has their role to
in
do
this,
it.
yeah.
So I use that as a teaching when I do the teaching mass. I use the example of going to a family event and a Thanksgiving dinner.
So I have a curiosity. Once you become a priest, how do you celebrate Thanksgiving? Is that something that you all do within your...
I don't. I don't give thanks to God anymore.
It's one of those things where it's for me as a priest. Everyone says, "Well, what are you doing for the holidays? What are you gonna do for this?" Those are working days. Here we'll have Mass in the morning. Father Pat's going to do Mass next week for Thanksgiving. I'll be up at St. Ignatius for Thanksgiving Mass. So those are working days for us. And so I like to, when I'm done with the Mass, I like to hide. And we all get, I think we all get invitations to go to people's houses, and people are very generous in welcoming us in. But for Thanksgiving and for Christmas and stuff, once I'm done with Masses, I go hide.
Well, I think that's something that is expected for something like Christmas or Easter, where there is that religious attachment to that holiday. But I think people would be surprised to learn how busy you all are on Thanksgiving.
Well, I wouldn't want to overstate that. We will preside at a Mass, and we do. So people who come to Thanksgiving Mass are choosing to come to Mass on Thanksgiving as part of their celebration. And many parishes, like the time when I mentioned I was in Detroit in '83, I was studying in Toronto, but I came down to Detroit to visit with a family whose daughter I met on the Colville Indian Reservation, and she was home, so I came down to that. And we went to the morning Mass at their parish, and the whole parish was there, and everybody had brought food, to be given to food kitchens or whatever. I've been to other parishes, like over on Maui, one family I was visiting over there, that family, their Thanksgiving celebration was serving the poor in this community center, not even a church center, a community center. They're in Hawaii, and they were like, the maitre d' and the waiter and the waitress, all of that of poor people who knew to come. So it's work, I suppose, in that sense, but it's also, the way I would say this is that as a priest, if you want, one of the quote-unquote sacrifices I have made is that I don't spend Thanksgiving necessarily with my family. I spend it with the church, broadly speaking. And I don't consider it a sacrifice, right? But, how do we spend Thanksgiving? No, we see each other often enough. We don't need to waste or ruin our Thanksgiving by necessarily making a big dinner for ourselves at home, right? So
a lot of parishes have different traditions for that Thanksgiving Mass too. Like here we give away bread. So, I think we order over 200 loaves of bread that we distribute on Thanksgiving. Right after Mass, we bless it and stuff like that. So there's a lot of traditions that way too that make a lot of sense.
Sometimes, some years, it can be difficult to come up with things to be thankful for, especially if it's been particularly stressful or if there are things beyond our control that are kind of stretching us out. If somebody is struggling with that around this time of year, what advice might you give them?
You try to find what's grateful or what you're grateful for or thankful for, regardless of the circumstances. In today's polarized world in politics, some people get very frustrated are very frustrated in the church with the politics of the church. And I always say, well, that's someone's daughter, that's someone's husband, that's someone's wife. I mean, you always try to find the good in that. And I point out, and I do this at funerals a lot, is the fact that we can be sad is because we could be joyful. And the fact that we can laugh is because we can also cry. And so those go together. And that's that whole reading from Ecclesiastes. There's a time and a place for everything.
I'm the child of an alcoholic talking here, and the child of a divorce. Holidays as a young kid were painful reminders of what I didn't have, or of how when everybody else appears to be celebrating, I'm walking on eggshells. I think it's important for all of us and all of our parishioners, no matter the year, but to be aware that in our communities, there are a large number of peoples for whom the holidays are scary for any number of reasons, more so than regular. As adults, we learn certain coping mechanisms. But what I would say to our young parishioners, or especially teenagers, if your family, for example, if your family is intact, if your complaints are really not serious complaints, you don't have the right shoes or something like that, no, be very sensitive to your friends and classmates who, for some reason, seem to be getting quiet around holiday times. And it's like, why? And it's often because holidays are stressful and difficult because of whatever the brokenness is. All right. Hopefully it doesn't come across as a platitude or a simplistic thing, but for those who do suffer through those times, it is an indication, our natural, I'd say, reaction of whatever the suffering is or the frustration or this or that, is that it does highlight, if we choose, those things that are blessings, and we can remind ourselves of that. I spent many, many years working with college and high school kids, and my own brokenness, family brokenness and alcohol in my family allowed me, I feel, to be pastorally sensitive to the young people that I was working with, because I could see these things. It's kind of like, well, God's giving this to you so that you will be able to help in the future. I don't want that to be a platitude, but I actually think that's quite possibly exactly what's going on. That even the suffering that is given to us, or that I don't believe God gives us suffering, that enters into our life, it is like every gift, if you will, not meant for us, but meant for others, so that in future, when we have a friend or an acquaintance who is going through what we've gone through, we can provide support. I experienced that in Congress. I had a number of Congress persons over the years who were dealing with something, and I'm thinking, so that's why I went through that. Because I had something with which I could speak with the congressperson going through something that I had been through.
Well, and that's that negative sort of chaos, that lack of security that you were kind of addressing there, which is in stark contrast to the positive chaos that you were talking about, Father Mark, where even if it is somewhat stressful at the time, it is also a sign of a functioning family. It's a sign of people who are coming together, and even though it can be difficult to get the supper together, there's still the intent to sit down and share a peaceful meal together. So that even that positive chaos can be something to look forward to.
Or even if it's not peaceful, it might be some elements of joy in it.
The chaos of our masses with little children squawking and kicking and yelling and screaming is that. It's that. I hope people can. That's a positive chaos. It's a sign of life. Yeah.
John Martin, when he was here, Father Martin, he used to always say, sometimes when kids would act up in Mass and parents would get up to carry them out, he'd say, "No, stop, sit back down. And then he'd say, "Their screams are much better than our homilies."
And if the church isn't crying, it's dying.
Right. When I first got to St. Ignatius 7 years ago, we had a lot of statuary up in the altar area. And so I moved things around to kind of make it a little bit more, quote unquote, organized, in my opinion. And one of the things I moved back was a statue of Our Lady. And I put it in the back of the church. And it's Our Lady of Perpetual Help. It's a 14th century tradition out of Italy, Our Lady of Perpetual Help. And I put it in the back. And, a couple of people got really upset with me for moving Mary to the back of the church. But the reason why she's called Our Lady of Perpetual Help is when you look at her, she's holding the infant child, and he only has one sandal on. And so how many times have you seen a mom or a dad or an uncle or grandma carrying a little one, and it's like, what happened to that sock? Where's it? So, so here's a statue of Our Lady of Perpetual Help in the back of the church with Jesus only having one sandal. So there is a lot of joy in that noise.
Well, and it's often the case, and I try to preach against this, but when parents come with their little kids, they tend to stay in the back. So, that would be, okay, well, good. You're back there with, perpetual help, taking care of a little kid who's lost a sock or a shoe. But anyway, I would say, if your kid's going to be making noise, it's no better that they're in the back than they're up front. And if they're up front, they actually might be distracted enough by what's going on. Some parishioner at one point said, "Well, boy, I know what you're talking about, Father. I can remember the first time we had to go to the front of the church with my little kids, and my little kids, were up there with me, and one of them said to me, 'What are those guys doing up there?' So it's like they'd been coming to church, but they'd never seen what's actually going on at church. It's just like, I think I'd act up as a little kid if I was bored out of my skull like that. But if something's going on up here, what is this? So that's why I encourage people. And I would just mention anecdotally for those who are listening, and we don't have assigned places in the pews, right? But people know where people are in the pews usually. Well, on a day, would you be willing to give that space up for a young family with their kids? Because some of it is, well, when we come, we don't want to, we don't want to bother the people that have been here for a long time. So those are kinds of sensitivity things too, I think. I've been around politics a lot, and my thing is, you have these very experienced and very skilled politicians who've been there forever, and it's like, get out of the way. As long as you are here doing this, that means somebody else isn't. Somebody else who's rising or this or that. And so, and I'm not saying that, but it's the same phenomenon that newcomers or those who are beginning to participate or joining a church can be frustrated that they can't quite get in because, well, everybody's here, everything seems to be taken care of, so I don't have to do anything. I think that happens in human dynamics, just period. So I'd ask for our parish to be mindful of that. And I don't think anybody's doing anything intentionally. It's just the way I think human dynamics work. And so to be mindful when people do come with their kids and they're encourage, go ahead and sit farther up. Go ahead and sit farther up. It's all right.
Well, and that's why we have the welcoming letter over there.
Oh yeah.
Thanking the parents for bringing their little ones, and
that's nice. Certainly something to be grateful for. I always thank those people when they come out. Thanks for bringing a little one.
That's something. If we're going to if we want to extrapolate this and talk about the national holiday that's coming up, we would never tell somebody, hey, don't bring your kids to Thanksgiving meal.
Right,
We
right.
would never say, don't sit them at the table with the rest of us. Even if it is like a kid's table that they have, they're still there. They're still a part of that family. And
Yeah.
so I think it's very similar to what you all are talking about in the Mass, too.
Well, and
One hopes.
for a lot of Thanksgiving families, like my family was like this. Our dining room table wasn't big enough for everybody, and so you had the little kids table, and it was always a mixture when you got moved from the little kids table to the big table, depending on who was there. It was always kind of funny.
And that the idea of allowing other people to participate, getting out of the way, as you say, Father Conroy. Anecdotally, for my own self, my parents would prepare Thanksgiving meal, and it was adequate. Neither of them were great cooks, but they weren't terrible cooks either. So it was more about the communal element, more about the family. Well, my father remarried, and his stepson, my new stepbrother, went to culinary school. Amazing cook, amazing, like just the prep and everything. And so by my parents kind of stepping back and getting out of the way, that allowed him to step forward and kind of let his talents shine. So I think that's a little bit like what y'all are talking about too.
Well, yeah, I think we're always looking for more Mass servers, boys or girls, boys and girls, and other people that would be willing to join the choir or want to become readers if they're not already, or want to become ushers. I mean, we're very grateful for the commitment of all these people that we have currently. But it'd be nice to, have a larger bullpen or a larger calendar of schedules. I mean,
Deeper bench.
a deeper bench, and that's been one of the things. I've been here over a year now. I'm just so impressed. I go over to preside at Mass. I don't go over to set everything up. Is everybody reading? Do we have everything? I don't have to worry about that, which is a great blessing that our parish has.
Is that abnormal in your experience?
Often enough. I mean, my parochial experience is here. But I've helped out at parishes over the years that the priest had to be away for something or this or that. And I'd get there and do we have somebody to do the first reading? Do we have somebody to do the second reading? And, so there are those kinds of congregations. I mean, there is always somebody who will do that, but it's not a going concern. But here it is a going concern. Those things are all taken care of. And the sacristan walks out there and looks out at the congregation and knows if somebody, that schedule isn't there, who to go say something to. And our Eucharistic ministers, they're in the congregation and they can see, they need somebody, and up they go. And we'd like a deeper bench, just always. We want more people to be participating. I mean, it would be great if we had college students or high school students who are readers, for example, that are breaking, they're rookies of the year or whatever. I mean, they're breaking into the lineup when oftentimes they come and it's like, everything's taken care of here. I don't need to do anything, And again, it's not meant to be exclusionary. It's just the dynamic. So I want to get the word out there that we're encouraging, and if you aren't participating in those kinds of ways and would like to, please let us know.
Well, I think that kind of participation is certainly something to be thankful for.
Absolutely.
But all of these bench analogies and stuff, I'm starting to think that your football stuff, Father Hightower, is starting to bleed through here.
Well, baseball. That's what's
okay.
going on in my head. But
Okay. What about you, Father Mark? What's your sport of choice?
I don't know. I don't have one, but I would say just to pick up on what Pat and Craig have been saying. Boy, the more young people that we can get involved and get up there around the altar, boys and girls, the more joyful it'll be. I think younger kids suffer from feeling like they don't have a role in the church, in the prayer, the public worship that we do. So boy, the more ways that we can create roles for them and more encouragement to get them up there in numbers, the better. The better for all of us. And certainly better for them, I think. So I would hope for more of that.
Well, we're starting to come toward the end of our time, and Father Hightower, I know you've got busy places to be, but as we kind of move out of this time and into Advent, any thoughts going into this Advent season?
Well, we're always supposed to be about preparing the way of the Lord. All right. So Advent was we're praying, Advent, Latin, toward the coming of whom? Well, and it's both the cyclical celebration of the actual birth of Christ, that coming, but also the second coming. Okay, so what are we as a parish? What ought we to be about all the time, but in a way we're especially liturgically celebrating? We are preparing for the coming of the Lord, so that when he comes, he will recognize us and recognize the place. It's like, well done.
And hopefully we can recognize.
Oh, well, that side of it too.
Sure. There's that a song from, I think, the mid-'90s, What If God Was One of Us?
I love that song.
And, that's so the coming of Christ is also the recognition of Christ.
Yeah.
In the people that we deal with.
Well, all right. This has been a lot of fun. Fathers, is that the way that I address? Is that a
that would be the plural of the word, yes.
Potters, how about that? Well, I appreciate you all coming on to talk about this, and we have a lot to be thankful for, I think, in our lives, and it just kind of takes a mind of gratitude to find those things.
Well, if you go through life choosing to be grateful, it's a lot more livable than choosing to be resentful or disappointed.
Absolutely.
Amen. All right. Well, thank you all for coming on.
Thank you.
Good job. Yeah,
And
thank you.
happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you for being with us today as we walk as pilgrims this road together. If you feel called to learn more, please consider checking out St. Francis Xavier or your local Catholic church. All are welcome into our community as God loves us all equally. If you are interested in supporting the Vox SFX podcast, please visit sfxmissoula.org/donate. Until next time, go forth in peace and be the light of Christ in someone's day.
By Jove, we've got it.